Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today's topic will be about fractions. Right off the bat, fractions, since they are written in the form of a ratio, will fall under the category of rational numbers. So this is just a reminder that fractions are part of the category of rational numbers. Also, stay tuned till the end of the video if you want some helpful exercises that would reinforce the subject from today's lesson. Okay, so let's get started. So you might have seen fractions, common fractions, such as 1/2, 3/4, 1/10, etc. And today we're really going to go into the foundation, the structure, and different types of fractions that you might come across. So let's look at this one, x divided by y. I just used x and y as an example, but you can replace these two variables with any number that you want. Just know that the structure will always be the same. So in a fraction, our top value over here, our x, is going to be called the numerator. Just remember numerator as the one that's on top of the bar, and this is our fraction bar. So a fraction bar means division. So essentially, you're going to have x divided by y. And our y, the value on the bottom of the fraction bar, is our denominator. So just note that the fraction bar equals division. So anytime you have a fraction, you're basically just dividing. Another way to look at a fraction is that it's part of a whole. So let's go over two examples here. For example, 1/3 of a candy bar. So we have our purple candy bar here. The first thing that we're going to do to determine our 1/3 is we're going to divide the candy bar into 3 parts. So let's divide once here and once here. So these are the 3 pieces of the candy bar, and you might ask, how did I know that we have to divide this into 3 pieces? It's because I looked at the denominator. The denominator told me how many total pieces of the candy bar I'm going to have, and the numerator, the 1, tells me how many pieces we need to, let's just say, take. So if I were to take 1/3 of a candy bar, then I could take this piece, or I could take this piece, or I could take this piece. The only thing that matters is you only take 1 piece of that candy bar that's divided into 3. You don't take all 3, you only take 1. So let's go on to another example, 4/6 of this green chocolate bar. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide this into 6 pieces. And if you think that you can solve this problem right now, go ahead and pause the video, and you can check the answer later on when I'm done with this problem. So first things first, we're going to divide this into 6 pieces. So I'll divide it in the half once, and then I'll divide it into 3 parts. This half is 3 parts. And then this half will also be 3 parts. And in reality, when you're doing this, all of these parts are supposed to be equal. It's just right now, there's no system of measurement for me, but just imagine that all of these parts are equal. Okay, so if we are looking at 4/6 of our chocolate bar, what we know is that we can only take 4 pieces out of our chocolate bar. And our chocolate bar is divided into 6 total pieces. So if we can only take 4, we can take 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if you want to mix it up a bit, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4. You just have to take 4 pieces, and that's it. Okay, so now that we've looked at 2 kinds of perspectives, let's dive a little bit deeper into the division aspect of a fraction. So, the division aspect of a fraction is basically when you divide the 2 numbers so that you can end up with a decimal. So what I mean by that is, let's take the fraction 1/2. So if we're dividing this fraction, the rule is that you always divide numerator. You always divide denominator from numerator. So it's always going to be x divided by y if your 1 was x and your 2 was y. So if we put this into a simpler form, we get 1 divided by 2. And then if you divide that, you get 0.5. And just for the sake of this, let's do a division. So if we have 1 divided by 2, so 1 is going to be going under the division box. And then we do 1 divided by 2. Well, we obviously can't do that just yet. So we add a decimal point. Now we can do that. So we put our 0 point above because we know that 5 can go into 2 to make 10. And we have a 0 remainder. So that's how you solve this. Okay, let's look at a couple more examples. So we have 1/10. So we're dividing 10 from 1. And then we get 0.1. Just for reference, we can do a division box. So we have 1 divided by 10. We can't do it just yet, so we add a decimal. Oh, I'll move this down a little bit. Okay, and then now we can do it, so we can certainly add a 1 up top. Put the 10 below, because 10 goes into 1. And then we have a remainder of 0. Also, a cool trick if you didn't know is that if you divide by 10, the only thing you have to do is move the decimal place once to the left, and then you can get your 0.1. If you were dividing by 100, you would have to move the decimal place one more time, so you get 0.01. That's a cool trick. Okay, and our final example is 3 divided by 4, or 3/4. So we're going to put this in the form of 3 divided by 4, and so on. You can do your division box and then figure that out, and you get 0.75. Okay, so we've got that out of the way. Let's talk about rational numbers and how they can be converted into fractions. So you might not notice, but actually 5 can be converted into a fraction. The trick is that we have our denominator as 1. Now remember, if you divide anything by 1, the answer is equivalent to what you started out with. So if you started out with 4 divided by 1, the answer will be 4. And remember that in a fraction, our division bar is basically the division sign. So you can also do 4 divided by 1. But since our 1 is basically non-existent because we don't really need the 1 divided by 1 to show that the answer is equivalent to 4, we just leave the answer as 4. But the idea of this was to show you guys that any rational number can be converted into a fraction, because the whole idea of a rational number is that you can write it as a ratio. And similarly, even if we have negative numbers, we can write it as a fraction. So if we have -2, you just put it as -2 divided by 1, or -2 divided by 1 like that. And then you get your final fraction product. Okay, moving on to improper fractions. Now this is where it becomes a little bit tricky. An improper fraction is when the numerator is greater than your denominator. So for example, 3 divided by 2, 10 divided by 8, and 17 divided by 7. These are all examples of improper fractions. So we're going to look at conversion. First of all, conversion from proper to improper fractions. Now the proper fractions that I used here are mixed, meaning that we have a rational number and a fraction. But there is a certain rule to this type of conversion from proper to improper. Now if you want to convert this 5.5 into something like 10 divided by 8, there is a rule. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the 5 by our 2. So let me do it like this. So we can say multiplication. This is our multiplication sign. So first of all, we're going to multiply our 5 by our 2. So we get 10. Then we're going to add 1 to that product. So plus whatever you have here. So we're going to do plus 1. 10 plus 1. We get 11. And then you're going to put it all over the denominator. 11 divided by 2. So I know that it sounded a little bit hard at the first try, but we have another example that we're going to go over so that we can get this straight. So if we have our 3 and 1/4, remember what we did first? We multiplied these two together. So 3 times 4, 12. And then we're going to add whatever we have here plus our numerator. 12 plus 1, 13. And then we're going to put whatever we got from those past two steps over the denominator. So I'll do like a fraction bar over the denominator, x over our denominator. So 13 divided by 4. And this is your improper fraction equivalent to 3 and 1/4. So basically think of your improper fraction as an equivalent to your proper or mixed fraction. The next thing we're going to look at is conversion from improper to proper fractions. And our example we're going to be using is 9 divided by 4, or 9/4. And I listed out all the steps here so that we can go through it one by one. So step number 1, divide x divided by y. So we're going to do x divided by y. So taking our y and dividing it from our x position. So if we have 9 divided by 4, we can write it out like this. And then we can plug it into our division box. And for now, we're just going to solve until we reach the whole number result, which is what step 2 is about. So 4 goes into 9 2 times. 4 goes into 9 2 times, and we have 8 down here. 4 times 2 is 8. And then if we subtract this, we get 1. So our whole number result is 2 in this case. Step 2 is to keep the whole number result. So what I'm going to do for step 2 is keep 2 aside. And step 3 is put the remainder over the original denominator. So we got our remainder down here. It equals 1. And our original denominator was 4. So we're going to put the 1 over the 4. And this is our final step. So maybe I should keep step 3 with the 1/4. And here is our remainder, which is yet to be remainder. So step 2 and step 3 comprised of the final result. So our final mixed fraction result equivalent for 9 divided by 4 is 2 and 1/4. So essentially this is just a bunch of simplifying and conversion when it comes to improper and proper fractions. The next thing we're going to look at is unlike denominators. So you're going to come across this pretty often, and most likely you're going to be doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, comparison with two fractions with unlike denominators. So let's look at this. I also listed out the steps here. Step 1 is find the least common multiple, LCM, of the denominator. So let's look at our two fractions here, 1/2 and 2/4. Our denominators in this case are 2 and 4. Now, obviously, you can find the LCM by just looking at this problem, because 2 goes into 4 2 times, 4 goes into 4 1 time. So obviously, our LCM here is going to be 4. So we've established that our LCM is 4. Now what we're going to try to do is convert 1/2 into a fraction with denominator 4. We don't know what our numerator is, but we know that our denominator has to be 4. Okay, our step 2 is to convert as necessary by multiplying. So this is the conversion part. Now we can see that 2 goes into 4 2 times. So we're basically multiplying this fraction by 2 in order to get this fraction. And the easiest way to look at it that way is if we do 1 times 2. So if we do 1 times 2, our question mark is equal to 2. And similarly, 2 times 2 right here, is equivalent to 4. So we're just multiplying this entire fraction on the left by 2 in order to get the fraction on the right. So our final fraction would be 2 divided by 4. So we have 2 divided by 4 as our new fraction that is just converted. It is still equivalent to 1/2. Because if we simplify this, if we divide by 2 over 2, we still get 1/2. So it is still just 1/2, just a little bit more to it. It's just multiplied by 2. And then we have 2/4 versus 2/4. Okay, now we can see that these two fractions are actually equal. But they're not always going to be equal. In some cases, you're going to have to use the greater than or less than sign. Okay? And that is how you compare fractions with unlike denominators. So I added a section at the bottom of this. It's called Try It. There's a bunch of questions that I will read through that go over all of the topics in today's lesson. So our first question is, label the components of the following fraction, 10/30. What I'm asking you to do is just basically label the numerator, denominator, and fraction bar. Number 2, shading in some part of a candy bar, 2/5 of a candy bar. Number 3 is converting a fraction to decimal form. Number 4 is writing 2 2/3 in the form of improper fractions. Number 5 is writing 7/4, an improper fraction, in the form of a proper fraction. And by proper fraction, I mean mixed. So you're going to have some number, for example, 10, with a fraction by its side. That's what mixed means. And then number 6 is, I'm asking you to compare two fractions, 1/3 and 3/9. And number 7, comparing 2/6 and 3/12. So all of these questions, if you would like to send the answers to exceledlearning, I'll link the email in the description box below. Please definitely try out these questions if fractions is your weak spot and if you would like a little bit more practice. And we'll just briefly go over what we went over in today's video. So fractions, we determined the structure of a fraction. We did some examples with a candy bar, looking at it from the perspective of a part of a whole. Then we learned about division with fractions. We determined how to make a fraction go to a decimal. And then we went over improper fractions, the definition, and a lot of conversions. And finally, we went over unlike denominators. So that sums up today's lesson. Please like this video, subscribe, share this video with friends and family. And also leave some comments down below about what I should make my next couple of videos about. If you guys are having any trouble with any sort of math topics, definitely let me know, or even science topics too. Please request videos, I would love that, and I'll see you next time.